Welcome back to this week's episode of Senior to Scratch. I'm honored to have the next guest be the first guest on my podcast. He's a host of a very successful podcast called Wicked Smart Golf. By my last count, he had 266 episodes. Maybe it's even more than that now. He is also a published author, a mental golf coach, and a plus handicapper. He's focused on improving performance on the golf course without changing your swing. I've included details on how to get to his content in the show notes. So please welcome Michael Leonard to the show. Michael, first, my humble thanks for taking the time to be the first guest on my podcast. Would you like to add anything to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks again. Obviously, nice job just starting the podcast. It's always a fun way to share with others, and I appreciate you having me on. And happy to hopefully help inspire and give your audience just some tips to play better without swing changes.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thanks again. So I'll give a bit of background on what I'm trying to do with my podcast. It's really to document my journey to try to get to scratch. I'm in my 50s now. I'm currently a five and have never really been close to scratch, maybe down to a three or so. So I don't even know if it's possible, but I'm going to try. Also, I'm trying to help fellow older golfers improve on fitness, nutrition, understanding statistics, which is, I know, one thing that you stress that you need to know how what your numbers are, and finally, mental game, which is your forte. So that's why I'm very honored to have you. So let's talk about some golf just to kind of kick things off. For reference, these past few weeks in Calgary have been pretty brutal in terms of the weather. It's been cold, windy, rainy, even some snow. One of my rounds actually got cut short when gale force winds emerged, causing my cart to pull backwards, sunglasses to blow off my playing partner's head, and then we got hit with rain, sleet, and snow
Wow,
within about 10 minutes. And then we
that's
walked back up. Yeah,
crazy. It's
yeah, it
almost
was crazy.
June. Like that's nuts.
Yeah. So how's your golfing been in sunny Arizona? I assume that's where you're doing
It's
most of it.
hot. Yeah, it crossed 100 today, so it's gonna just get warmer the next few months, and yeah, I'll be practicing very early. It's so bright out so early, so my practice is pretty much very early in the morning, from about 6 to 9 if I can, and then if not, I have a simulator I go to that's air conditioned, and I can go later in the afternoon if I'm working or doing interviews and stuff in the morning. And then I just play a lot of tournaments. So I have about 50 to 60 tournament days I play a year, and they don't care if it's hot. So I have a tournament coming up, and it's going to be probably, I think I'm the one of the first few tee times out the first day, and then the second day it gets real warm, like 12:30. But I've played in a lot of heat. I think the hottest I've played in was 118 degrees. So that was in terms of temperature. I've also played in some really hot temperature of like 90 degree humidity, 90 degrees with 90% humidity as well. When I went to Q school. So yeah, I've definitely played in some hot environments, and then also grew up in Oregon where it was very cold, a lot of rain, a lot of wind, a lot of just bad weather. So I've kind of done a little bit of everything. I'd prefer 70 to 80 degrees, but we just don't get that a ton. So it's just another element and another reason the mental game is so important because you have to battle the elements wherever you're at.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I'm kind of jealous of the fact that I'd rather be playing in the hundreds than in the 30s, that's for sure. Uh,
Yeah, no, I definitely would rather play in the hot weather than the cold weather. I fully understand that.
right on. So, Michael, I love the fact that you don't talk about swing mechanics. It's easy for folks like myself. I know my golfing buddies were on YouTube watching videos, constantly tinkering with our swings and never get a predictable and comfortable place with our swing. I think even with older players like myself in our 50s, it's harder for us to make wholesale swing changes. So I'm going to sort of put you on the spot here, but based on your coaching and personal experience, if you were to pinpoint the most sustainable path to improvement for recreational golfers, what would that be? Would that be practicing, playing, focusing on mental approach? What's kind of your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's to me. So my whole book and brand is about a five-pillar approach to play better without swing changes. And don't get me wrong, you're always going to be working on your swing. That is part of it, especially as you get older. Your body changes, maybe you have injuries, things like that. So I'm not anti-swing changes. It's just that obviously I'm not a swing coach, and I just feel like for the everyday golfer, there is a lot of low hanging fruit and ways to improve without swing changes, because you're right. So many guys and go down that YouTube rabbit hole, and they're just on there all the time. They're always tinkering on their swing. They're always buying new training aids. They're always trying to fix it. But then when you're playing golf, then you're trying to fix it as well, and you're just not really actually playing. So a lot of times guys get into playing golf swing versus just playing golf. So yes, you want to develop a consistent swing. You want to learn how to swing your swing, but there is so much other stuff that we can do. So I do think the mental game is important, but I think it's also important to clarify that to me, I think of it like a sliding scale. So if you can't break 100, the mental game probably isn't that important compared to just learning how to make solid contact consistently with it. But as you get in the 90s, it starts to be a little bit more important. As you get in the 80s, it starts to be a lot more important. And then if your goal is to shoot in the 70s or to become a scratch or even a plus handicap, that's where the mental game comes in more and more. Because when you get to the level that I'm at and a lot of like tournament golfers are at, everybody can do all, hit all the shots. They have all the skills. Sure, we have on days and off days with ball striking, but at the end of the day, it's how can I make sure my mental game is setting me up for success? And that is really where it just comes down to having consistent routines and just making sure your mind isn't sabotaging your round, because like I said, it really does kind of differ. So wherever you're at, you kind of got to figure that out. But to me, you really can't spend enough time learning more about yourself and your mental game on and off the course. And then some other things, of course, are short game. I talk a lot about putting, talk a lot about wedge work, just because there's so much low hanging fruit there as well. I mean, most shots happen inside 100 yards, yet most guys do not practice inside 100 yards. And so it is obviously a very important component. And then practicing the right way. So yes, practicing is so key. Again, a lot of people practice, but I don't know if it's really benefiting them. So I really try and stress with my coaching students and my readers and listeners, like when we do go out and practice, let's have a plan. Let's make sure we're working on our weaknesses. And there's a lot of different things that we can do. Some mistakes we want to avoid, some best practices. And then the final pillar is all about the final pillar is all about course management. So what I call playing wicked smart. So you can practice the right way. You can have the best mental game in the world. You can have great swing, great wedges, great putting. But if you don't actually think your way around the golf course, you're going to be wasting a lot of shots. So that's why it is so important. And I kind of think the mental game is an extension of course management. They kind of go hand in hand, but we got to make sure that we're not letting frustration get the best of us. We got to make sure that we're able to hit shots that we know we can hit in practice and not just try and play hero golf when we're out there. We have to know when to play it safe, when to go for it. And so there's just a lot of components to actually playing golf. And that's why I like getting playing lessons, I think is just as beneficial as actually swing lessons, because again, the driving range is not very similar to what it's like on the course. So sometimes you have to just learn how to get into different situations out there, how to think your way around it. And the better decisions you make, the lower scores are going to get.
Excellent. Are you a proponent of block practice versus random practice, a combination of the two? Like, what's your thought there?
Yeah, I actually just wrote an article about this for one of my writing clients, and I think that there's a lot of pros and cons to both. I think that especially for beginners, block practice is going to be key just because it is so important to, there's a lot of variability in the golf swing already. So if you're switching targets a lot, you might not be always having the right alignment. You might be mixing it up a little bit. So if you're like making swing changes, or you're just trying to develop a feel, or you're just trying to figure out your one shot shape, block practice is going to be helpful. The problem is that a lot of people either get mentally lazy and they kind of just go through the motions and they don't really pick targets anymore. They're just kind of there, and they're not really actually, trying to make those swing changes or staying mentally engaged. So I think block practice is good, but maybe like after every 5 balls, walk back from your station, take a breath, just do something other than just think about like that same target, and just give yourself a little bit of a break, then walk back in, go through your routine, hit 5 more balls after, 15 or 20, take 5 minutes. A lot of times I see guys just rapid firing golf balls, and you do need repetition, of course, to learn the golf swing. And if you're making swing changes, but it gets to a point where it is kind of, diminishing returns, and you're not really getting the most out of your practice session. So I think that, yes, block practice is super helpful, and it's done at the highest levels as well. But sometimes if you just need to mix it up, or you do want to kind of change up your practice routine, having some sort of focus type of practice where you're picking targets and you're doing more variable and you're working on, I'm going to hit a fade on this shot with a 6-iron, and then I'm going to hit the next shot with a wedge, and then you're trying to play imaginary holes out there. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but it's really just about staying mentally engaged and not getting lazy. Because when you get lazy, that's when you create bad habits. That's when we're kind of there and we're just more spending money and time than not really getting the type of results. So I think block and variable are great. There's a lot of other ways you can practice. Again, short game practice, competitive practice. If you go out with a buddy, you can make some competitions with it. There's a lot of different ways we can do it. It's just that I always stress with my players, make sure we have a plan, make sure that we're working on our weaknesses. Because again, most guys go out there and they're really good with their, hybrid and their 3-wood and driver, and that's where they spend all their practice, and they're terrible with their irons and wedges. So it's really important to just make sure we spend our practice time wisely, because we do have so much going on. We have busy schedules, lives, businesses, families, all that. So we want to make sure when we do go out that it's just intentional and hopefully helping you get closer to your goals.
Oh, right on. Excellent answer. I know you're a proponent of the pre-shot routine even during practice. And I tried to do that, and it certainly does help because, like you said, I was previously rapid firing, just get another ball out of the tray and just smack it. But I think you mentioned it, trying to play the first few holes on the range. I think probably I haven't tried it yet, but I mean that sounds like it could work quite well because I know the first few holes for me are typically the toughest ones to get in the groove.
Yeah, I think that that's really helpful. Like a lot of players like to, I've even talked to some professionals, and they've even mentioned that they do that before they go out. They'll, go through their normal warm up routine, and then they'll play the first 3 holes on the range. So they'll think about, the first hole, I'm going to hit 3-wood. I'm going to, kind of create a target on the range or a fairway. I'm going to hit that shot, and then I'm going to imagine where it ends up, and then I'm going to hit that next shot. And so then hopefully by the time you get to the first tee and you've already played 2 or 3 holes on the range, you feel a little bit more loose. You've already worked on your routine, so it doesn't feel quite as foreign when you step up on that first tee. And really the whole goal with a good warm-up routine is just making sure we're getting comfortable. And so there's a lot of things that, you can do before the round. And unfortunately, a lot of golfers kind of skip a warm-up routine and hope their game just shows up. So yeah, I think that having a good warm-up routine is great. Engaging your mental game as well in there, and not just going out and rapid firing golf balls like we talked about, and really being intentional, working through your wedges, then your irons, then your woods, then your driver, getting plenty of practice in at the short game area as well. I think that having a multifaceted approach like that will really help show up, so that way it doesn't take 5 or 6 holes to get warmed up.
Oh, excellent. So myself and a lot of people that I play with struggle with pre-shot confidence, I guess. So, we're not really that consistent with golfers to begin with. And I know like with great golfers like yourself, it's easier to focus on mental game because you don't hit bad shots very often.
Oh,
So
now I have to stop you there, because that's just not true. And I think that that's something I stress with my players all the time, especially juniors. I work with a lot of high school and college kids, and I really stress that, you don't hit a lot of good shots. No matter how good you get, you have a lot of good misses. So I really think that on an average round, even as a +2 handicap, I probably hit about 8 to 10 shots that I really think are perfect, and they're exactly how I imagined it. There's a lot of good misses, but I think that if you feel like you have to hit perfect shots to play great golf, I think that is a mental setback, and is really a limiting belief that holds so many golfers back. So I always stress to players when I'm working with them, like, you're going to hit bad shots no matter how good you get. And unfortunately, when you watch golf on TV, we just don't see it a lot. We only see the highlight reels. They don't show all the bad shots unless they're coming down the stretch and they're in the final group and then they hit a bad shot, because there's just not many groups left. You'll see it. But in general, you're not going to see the drives that go out of bounds. You're not going to see the irons that are missing the green. You're not going to see the flubbed wedges or the bad chips or the missed short putts. But it is important to remember, no matter how good you get, bad shots are part of golf. Bad days are part of golf. Slumps are part of golf. So it's important to always remember that. I think Tiger in 2000, 2001 is probably the exception to that. But pretty much every other human being on earth is going to have to deal with that. So I think that just understanding that, hey, I'm going to hit bad shots and that's part of it. How can I just stay mentally with it? Because you can hit a bad shot on a hole and still make par. You can hit 2 bad shots on a hole and still make par. You can even hit 3 bad shots and still make par if you hit a good putt. So I think it's just getting comfortable with being like, hey, I'm not going to hit a bunch of perfect shots. If I did, I'd be on the PGA Tour, right? So it's like understanding that is so key. And that takes a lot for people to believe. And I try and talk about that a lot on my show and in my book. Like, you're just not going to hit as many good shots as you probably think, especially if you get under pressure and in tournaments. That's just kind of where the mental game definitely plays in, but it's having the right attitude and the right optimism that, hey, I don't have to play perfect golf to score great.
Mm. Do you have any techniques that you like to use that kind of keep you engaged mentally pre-shot?
Yeah, so my pre-shot routine is sacred to me. It really is. Even if I'm playing awful, I stick to that routine, because one of the biggest things is when you have a good routine, you will at least be mentally with it. If your just swing is off that day and your mechanics break down, that happens. That's golf. But at least if your mental game is solid and you walk into each shot, you know your target, you know your distance, you know the club, you feel good about it, and then you just don't hit a good shot. That's a mechanical breakdown. And if you start to see, hey, I'm slicing it all the time, then go work with your swing coach, buy a training aid, figure out how to fix that slice, go back to some drills you might know. But at least hey, this wasn't a mental breakdown. This was a mechanical one. So that's why I really stress having a routine so much. And then really it's asking yourself the right questions, because a lot of golfers just stand over the ball and they have no confidence because they haven't done their homework. So that's why you need to be doing our pre-shot routine behind the ball and asking a few simple questions. What's the lie going to let me do? Where is the target? Where do I want to aim at? Where's a good miss? Where do I want the ball to go? Like, asking yourself good questions, you're going to get good answers. But the problem is that most of us just kind of get up there, hit the rangefinder to the flag, and then we walk into the shot and try and figure it out then. But when you do that, you're not really getting clear about your target. You're not really committing to the shot. You're not committing to the club. And then that leads to standing over the ball way too long. You get a lot of doubt. You get a lot of, is this 8? Is this 9? Where was my target again? Should I think, well, what about that swing thought I had earlier? And we start thinking too much. And when we're thinking too much, we're never going to play our best golf. So that's why I always joke, like, if you listen to the good players afterwards in their press conference and interviews, they never, after a win, talk about, I was really focused on my mechanics today. It's always, I was focused on my routine. I was sticking with the process. I was staying present. It's all mental stuff they talk about. So the more you can be mentally prepared for every shot, the more you're actually going to hit better shots, because your mind knows this is a 7-iron. This is my target. This is the right club. I know what the lie is going to do. And now I can hit the shot that I've worked on so hard in practice. So yeah, that's why practice obviously is key. If you never practice, you're not going to have any confidence. But I see a lot of guys that practice all the time, but then they still don't have any confidence on the course. And again, that usually is just a mental breakdown. So I can't stress enough the importance of a good routine. It's the only thing I can find that all good players, both pros and amateurs, have in common, because it gets you mentally and physically ready, because you're actually taking practice swings. You're getting clear for your mind, like, hey, this is where we want it to go. This is the swing I want. And then once you're ready, then you're going to get up there and you're going to execute a lot faster, and you're not going to stand over the golf ball too long.
Right. This is going to help my buddies out a lot because that's one of my observations is the timing is different, right? Like they'll stand over the ball for too long, much too long, and you know that the result's going to be not good after that, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a great book if you haven't read it yet, and I couldn't recommend it enough to any golfer. It's called Golf's 8-Second Secret, and the author talks about he studies some of the best or the best players that have won at least 5 major championships, and he found that all but one, who was Jack Nicklaus, basically spent 8 seconds or less over the golf ball. And there's a lot more gold in the book. He goes through some of the biggest meltdowns. He goes through some of the most successful turnarounds. He talks a lot more about routines. But when you start thinking about it, and when I read it, I was like, wow, like some of my worst shots, I can think about, man, I was standing over the ball so long because I was trying to think my way to a good shot. And to play your best golf, we got to get out of our analytical mind and we got to get into the subconscious. And the only way you can execute the golf swing that you have trained so hard for is when we're out of our thinking mind and we're back to just reacting and playing. And the only way we can do that is by making sure we're doing our stuff behind the golf ball. So then when we walk in, it's just like, hey, swing your swing. I know what to do. But yeah, if you're standing over it 10, 12, 15 seconds, not only is it going to slow down pace of play, studies have found that you're going to hit less fairways, hit less greens, and miss more putts. So it's going to help pace of play. It's going to help your performance. And I think it's just going to be a lot more enjoyable for everybody.
Right.
So if there's anything that people hopefully could take away, it's spend less time over the ball and spend more time behind it. So that way you can really commit to the shot.
Your kind of secret during your swing, I think, or right before your swing is to count backwards, correct? Is that
With
something that
putting,
you?
yeah. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's with putting. Okay.
yeah. So it's a really really interesting technique. There's a lot more to it. That's kind of one of the parts of it. But yeah, it's basically kind of like I said. It's keeping your in that instance is actually keeping your conscious mind busy so you can just react. And most of us make putting out to be way harder than it is. In reality, putting is mostly mental. Mechanics are obviously a little bit important, but once you get the mechanics dialed in, it's really just getting out of your own way and setting yourself up to make more putts. And it's such a funny way because like the golf swing, there's definitely positions we want to get into. But I mean, if you look at different putters over the years, I mean, Tiger versus Jack versus Arnie versus pick a golfer, they're all pretty different with putting. They have a lot of different strokes, setups, grips, ball position, things like that. So putting is a lot more kind of unique and individualized, but it's really just making sure that you have the right mindset over the putt to get out of your own way.
I find with myself, like there's stretches I go through where I have a sustained lack of focus. Like this last men's night, I think I was one over par after 6 holes. My electric trolley started having some operational issues, and I was tinkering it with it a lot. And I was on the next 8 holes, I think I was 10 over par, and then I finished with four pars. But like it's not just that. I mean, it could be, I get a text or a email or something that just kind of disturbs me a little bit, and it sort of ruins my focus. Even though I try to still stay consistent with that pre-shot routine. I don't know if you've kind of experienced that or worked with other folks that have that sort of maybe that focus issue, and if you have any suggestions there.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions with focus is that you're supposed to be focused the entire round. That's just not the case. In fact, I mean, if you just look at us, we have, as human beings, we have the shortest attention spans ever, thanks to technology and apps and everything else. And we're getting texts and we're getting calls, we're getting emails. And I think that one of the biggest problems that I face with a lot of my players, especially younger players, is they think they're supposed to be just mentally like locked in for 4, 5, 6 hours in some of these tournaments. In reality, you only need to be focused for 70 plus shots, however many shots you're going to hit for about a minute, minute and a half. And then after that, so think about it like this. Let's say I get to the golf ball. That's when it's time to focus. So you really want to that's kind of time. Again, that's why I like routines, because then it's like, all right, we're going wide, we're talking to players, we're doing our thing. And then I get to the ball and it's time to go narrow. I am going to Velcro my glove, and that's kind of my subconscious trigger. Like, all right, let's start doing the stuff. What's the lie going to do? What's the distance? What's the club? Then I get in my zone. I execute. I hit the shot. I have some sort of post-shot routine. Once that shot is over, undo the Velcro my glove. Then I can start talking about the weather. I can talk about what's going on at work. I can talk with my friends about what's going on in their life. But then you can go wide. And then again, when you get back to your shot, it's time to go narrow and wide. So when you do that, you're actually going to have a lot more mental juice. If you try and stay focused for 5+ hours, you're going to burn out. You're going to get super exhausted on the back nine. And when you finish the round, you're probably going to feel like you just, went to war, because you're going to be so tired mentally. And especially if you're walking, there's a lot of physicality, of course, with golf too. So it's very important to understand you're not trying to focus for 5+ hours. You need to focus about a minute a shot. And then after that, think about other stuff. Go out and try different things, because again, if you're trying to stay focused for too long, it's just going to make it really hard. And again, I think that we're all playing golf. You have a call come up, you have an email. Like, it's okay to think about those things, but then it's like, put that phone away. Time to get back. And that's why, again, the routine I think is even more important for everyday golfers, because we do have distractions. We have life happening as we're trying to play golf. And so then at least if you can have that little area where it's like, all right, it's time to refocus, hit my shot, then I can go back to thinking about that other stuff.
Yeah, smell the flowers, look at the birds, look at
Yeah,
the
I had a guest
clouds.
on my podcast. He's the author of Jira Golf, one of my favorite golf books of all time, and he actually said that. He said, really, golf is like a spa day, and the problem is that most of us don't enjoy the spa. We're not actually appreciating being out in nature. And he talks so much about the importance of being present and enjoying your surroundings, and how actually calming that is for your mind versus being glued to your phone the whole time. Got all this stimuli that our mind is still just not really sure how to process all this information. But if you put the phone down and you actually look around, you enjoy the scenery, it really is like a spa day, and it actually will calm your mind down. It's going to help you focus. It's going to take some of that pressure away, and you're just going to enjoy being outside a little bit more, and you'll tend to play your best golf too.
Right. Show gratitude, the fact that we're on the golf course, right? Because not a lot of people get that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, that's the first lesson in my book is have an attitude of gratitude because we're very lucky to play golf. We're very lucky to have equipment, the money, the time, the people that want to play with us, and it's very easy to take golf for granted. I know I've done it too many times, but I'm always, before I tee off on the first hole, my ritual is just look out in the distance. I'll look away for 30 seconds and just be like, man, I'm super excited. I'm super grateful to be here. Like this is a privilege. This literally is a great opportunity no matter how good or bad I play, it's just awesome to be out here. And when you have that, it just good things I feel like start to find you. And you got to have the gratitude off the course to have it on the course too. But yeah, you got to just appreciate this game, even though it's frustrating. And I've broken some clubs and said some bad things after some shots. But at the end of the day, it is a game. It's not feeding our families for 99.99% of us. So we got to make sure we're enjoying it. And there's just so much great things that can happen on the golf course with business, with personal relationships. There's just, even playing by yourself, you can learn a lot. And you got to have the right attitude, though. So, yeah, I think that having that attitude of gratitude is key.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I really appreciate that, Michael. So I subscribe to the Decade app to kind of switch gears, and I know you're a big proponent of that. You've had
Yeah.
Scott on your podcast, I think, a number of times, and so now I've got, I think, about 11 rounds in there. So I'm starting to accumulate some statistics because I think the only way for me to really mechanically to improve is to know where I'm losing shots to sort of the pros, right? And like I've basically seen that my putting is the worst segment of my game. Like it shouldn't be in theory because basically it doesn't require strength or any of that stuff that the pros average, swing technique and that sort of thing. I am losing 3 shots per round in putting alone, probably 2, 3 putts per round. So I'm trying to figure this out, and I've been listening to a lot of your work there, regarding the look and shoot method, which taps into this natural learning. And then if you listen to Scott, he's got the ladder drill, which kind of teaches regimented speed control. So I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but regarding putting, what would be your key to sort of better distance control, sort of avoiding those 3 putts, other than getting it closer on approach?
Yeah, yeah, I think that you're right. I mean, it really does come down to how close can we get those putts to it. And I mean, it's inside 10 feet is a lot easier. The goal with inside 10 feet is to make sure we always get it to the hole. I think that's the biggest thing that most golfers don't do. You just can't leave putts inside 10 feet short. You're going to lose a lot statistically to strokes gained. And then outside of 10 feet, that's definitely where you have to just start realizing that even for like the PGA Tour, I don't know at what distance, but they, if you're watching it on TV, it'll change from make rate to 3 putt rate. And so really, of course, the goal, like you said, is to get it as close as we can, and to hopefully avoid that 3 putt. So how are we going to do that? Well, I think it comes down to a few things. First off, we have to make sure that we have a consistent like green reading routine, because if you don't spend any time on the green, or you spend too much time, which I see a lot as well, and they overthink it, then we go back to what we talked about earlier in the conversation. Same with hitting, full shots. If you're standing over putts and you still haven't really committed, is this uphill, is this downhill, is this left, is this right? Then we're going to do exactly what we said. We're going to spend too much time over it. And then typically what happens is we either leave it way short or reduce it way past because we're just not really focused. So having a good green reading routine is absolutely key. And I think that for me, I feel like most golfers, to be honest with you, overcomplicate it. When you walk up to a putt and you mark your ball and you read it from behind the hole, if you feel good about it, there's no need to then go to the other side of the mark or the hole and read it from that way and then go from the side. I only reserve that for if I don't know the line. Like if I just am like, man, I don't know if this is left or right. I don't really know. I need a little bit more clarity, or maybe one of my playing partners is taking a long time chipping and something like that. Then I might go over there. But in general, I feel like not only is it going to help pace the play, but it's going to help you be more consistent because you're going to trust your gut. Intuition is so real in golf. If you walk into a putt and you think this is a left edge putt and it's going to go in at 6 o'clock if I start at the left edge, and you just trust that, 9 out of 10 times, I'd say you're going to hit a better putt and you're just going to be a lot more committed to it. So I think that having a good greening routine, trusting your intuition, trusting your gut is key. And then the second part of it is having a good putting routine. So green reading, we got to commit to it. We got to know, is it uphill, is it downhill? And if you do decade, so I walk off all my putts. So I'll be like, hey, this is 15 feet. So like what I do when I'm behind the ball, I will literally tell myself, this is 15 feet. It's left to right. It's a little bit uphill. Here's where we're starting it at, or here's where it's going in the hole at. Then I go into my putting routine. So at that point, again, my mind is super clear on where we want it to go. Then I stick to my putting routine. And so for me, I do my practice strokes behind the ball perpendicular. So I'm looking at the hole the whole time. Depending on your personality type, you might want to look at the ball. You might want to look at the hole. That's a whole system called the mental golf type, which I've been certified in as a mental coach. And I'm a huge fan of that too. But just like the little things, like having a good routine that matches how you visualize and see shots is good. So once I feel good though about my, one or two practice strokes, then I take my breath, walk into the putt. And then I pretty much give it 2 looks. And as soon as my left eye comes back, I strike the putt. I'm not spending any time lingering over it. I've already committed. But again, a lot of people just don't do their green reading properly or spend too much time or not enough time in that area, which then again leads to spending too much time over it. Right. Of course, mechanics are super important as well. But I really stress like when you are in practice to spend most of your time on those 20, 30, 40 footers, just lagging putts. You don't even have to putt to a hole. You can just put a poker chip down, put a, alignment stick down 18 inches behind it, see how many putts you can get, within a foot short. And then in between that, alignment stick, just work on speed, especially before the round. Most guys do not spend nearly enough time on speed control, and they pretty much ignore the putting green in general before the round. And so that makes for a long day too. Right. So yeah, there's a lot of things we can do, but I would just say to make sure we're really committed to how the putt's going to break and to have a good routine over every shot.
Are you quite mechanical, or you more feel like if you say, okay, I have a 20-foot putt, I need to take my putter head back this
No,
far?
yeah, I can't believe people actually do that, to be honest with you. I don't think most amateurs are good enough to do that. I've never thought this is how far I need to take it back. Not at all. That just I think comes from practice, from trusting your intuition, from reading the green properly. But yeah, I've never once thought this is, back to, I don't even know how you do it. What would you say? Back to my right foot or pass it? Like I have no idea.
Somebody
I
was
do
asking
think,
me the other day,
yeah.
why are you pacing your putts out? And I was like, oh, because I'm keeping track of my stats. Like that was the best
No, it's
answer.
good for stats for sure, but I think that I can't, I've never known anyone. I think Bryson does it. So maybe if you're as smart and analytical as Bryson, you can do that. But I think for the everyday golfer, I feel like that's going to be very complicated. And I really don't like mechanics on the course, putting or otherwise, but especially with putting, because, you have your stroke, you know what to do. It's just trusting it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Like your answers, very, very thorough and well thought out. So I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you again for agreeing to be on the inaugural guest on Senior to Scratch podcast. And we're very honored to have you on. Michael, can you let the listeners know where they can access your valuable content online?
Yeah, definitely. I again appreciate you having me on. I'm happy to always talk golf and hopefully share some stuff with your audience to speed up success. If you want to learn more, everything is just Wicked Smart Golf. So my book is on Amazon. There's also an Audible version with 3 hours of bonus content. And then all my handles on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram are at Wicked Smart Golf. And then if you just want to check out my website, wickedsmartgolf.com for any more interest in my online programs. I have an online mental golf academy. I do coaching as well for the mental side. And so, yeah, everything is just wickedsmartgolf.com, and love helping players from 20 handicaps all the way to +5.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks once again, Michael. And it was an honor to have you on the show. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.